So let's understand about the prompting techniques for the software testing. How you are going to choose the prompt or what technique to use for different areas or different scenarios in the software testing team and field. Now, selection of the appropriate prompting technique is really important. And first thing is I'll explain what type of prompting techniques are really useful and you need to use or need to learn and use it day to day in your day-to-day tasks. Next, we'll do hands-on of those prompting techniques as well. Now, first thing is prompt chaining. What exactly is prompt chaining? Prompt chaining is used for complex tasks which require precision with human verification at each step. As you know the word chaining, so when you chain a prompt after another, so you start with a prompt, check the output, then have another prompt, refine, and then have another prompt. So you chain prompt after the prompt. That's what prompt chaining is all about. Now, if we talk about what it does, it breaks the task into a smaller sequential prompt where the output of one becomes the input of the next. It is useful for test analysis, test design, test automation, where each test step is checked for accuracy and then further refined. That's where you use prompt chaining. For example, in the test case refinement, if we talk about, you start with first prompt, generate initial test cases for login feature. Okay, then you start with, you got the output, then you reviewed that output and you typed in another prompt. In continuation, review the generated test cases for boundary condition. So whatever test cases were generated, you review those for the boundary conditions, whether boundary conditions are added, if they are missing, that's another prompt. Then you got the outcome, updated outcome for the test cases. Then you started with third prompt, you typed in third prompt wherein refine the test cases based on the boundary condition analysis. So this is what prompt chaining. You start with a prompt, you get the output, you analyze the output, you see that there are certain changes that need to be made or updations need to be made in the output, you type in another prompt in continuation, and then third prompt. That's what prompt chaining is all about. And finally, when you're satisfied with your result, that's your final output from the generative AI. So this is what the prompt chaining technique is, and I'll explain you this with example, with practical approach that you can use in your projects in the upcoming tutorials. Now, if we talk about the few shot prompting is used for repetitive or specific constrained output format task. When we say specific format or constrained output format, say for example, you want your test cases to be generated in a specific format with the test case ID as TC-001. That's how the test case should start, or the test case numbering should start. It should start as TC-001. So you specify that as an example. Start the test case or have the test cases in the format wherein the test case ID is TC-001. You have the test case title, then you have the description, you have the steps, and then you have the expected result. Provide it in the tabular format. Or you want the test cases into the Gherkin syntax, given when then syntax, then you specify those as examples. And in few shot prompting, it is about multiple examples. You have few shot, so it is not when we say one shot, it is single example, but few shot is when you are providing more than one example. So 2 to 5 examples you provide me the test cases in this format, given when then format, and you in the example you provide a example of a test case. Then Gen AI automatically checks that this is the format you are looking for. You have provided the example, 2 examples, and that's what it makes it few shot prompting, because it's more than one example, and then generates the output as per the example or as per the format of the example that you have provided. So it is very useful in the Gherkin style test cases, any output format that you are looking for, not only the Gherkin style syntax in the test case or in the testing scenario. Yes, with the Gherkin syntax, with any of the other test case format you are looking for, you can generate the output in whatever format you are looking for, just providing more than one example. So 2 to 5 examples you have to provide, and that's what makes it few shot prompting. If we talk about the example, so generate user details in JSON format. You provided example 1 as the JSON format, so name, John Doe, email, and then example 2, name, email. Generate details for a new user, Alex Johnson. So now with this is prompt for few shot prompting, because you have provided 2 example 1 and example 2, and the format what it should be providing the output for the new user, which is Alex Johnson. So it will generate the JSON format for Alex Johnson with exactly the same format that you have provided in the examples above. This is what few shot prompting is, and we'll see that in action in upcoming video. Then we have the meta prompting. So here we have discussed one shot prompting. One shot prompting is where you just provide one example, okay, but from the ISTQB point of view, one shot prompting is not mentioned, but I'll anyways cover one shot prompting as well in the examples, so you know that when you are doing one shot, when you are doing few shot. And then we have the meta prompting, which is basically used for flexible dynamic tasks, useful for creating prompts for new and complex tasks. When we say meta prompting, what exactly it is? It involves a higher level prompt that guides the LLM to create, improve, or interpret other prompts or its own thinking process. Okay, the general description of the objective and the task guides the LLM in the creation of the final prompt. We'll see the example. Test strategy generation. For example, you are trying to generate the test strategy. What meta prompting is all about? You are an expert test manager. If, say, for example, you are working in HR, you are trying to get some data out of the HR manager. So you say you are an expert HR manager. So here in the testing space, I'm saying you are an expert test manager. Your task is to generate a comprehensive testing strategy prompt for a junior tester to test a new e-commerce checkout system. The prompt should ask for risk identification, test types to consider, and a suggested testing approach. So then in this case, the LLM will consider itself as a test manager, expert test manager. It will put itself in that shoes and will start answering the questions or start generating a comprehensive testing strategy. And then it will also ask for the risk identification, test types to consider, and suggested testing approach. You have also mentioned that should ask for these criteria during the test strategy creation. So this is what meta prompting is all about. When you ask the LLM to step into particular role or particular person's shoes and act or start suggesting or start creating the output accordingly. So this is for flexible or dynamic task wherein there is no specific format that you can define. For test cases, you can define specific format, but for test strategy, for the test plan, you want more flexibility. You want the LLM to step into a particular role or person's shoe and then answer the queries or define the test plan or the test strategy accordingly. So meta prompting is useful for all kind of complex tasks, okay, wherever complexity is more, such as your test report analysis or anomaly detection, test planning, test strategy creation. All these areas, meta prompting is what you will be using. You will be guiding the LLM to act as I want you to act as. That's the word of the prompting. So I'll explain that as well. So act as a expert test manager, act as a HR manager, act as a finance manager, and then you start the prompting. That's what meta prompting is all about. Now combining the prompting techniques becomes really important because not a single technique is going to provide you the best results. So you have to combine multiple prompting techniques based on the situation and what outcome you are looking for. So you can combine multiple prompting techniques and it's possible. Okay, so it's not like you start with one prompting and that's what you have to stick with. So this integrated approach leverages the strength of each method to achieve high precision, flexible and accurate outcome in the software testing space. For example, if we talk about, you start with meta prompting to create an initial prompt, right? Then the initial outcome that you have got, you use that to enhance the prompting. If we talk about you don't know anything about prompting, so you can say you use meta prompting. I want you to act as a test manager, create a prompt, or I want you to act as a tester, create a prompt to suggest the test cases in Gherkin syntax. So it will create a prompt. Then you use that prompt to refine, to add more examples. So that will be that you enhance with the few shot prompting. Then finally, it can be useful to divide the task into smaller subtasks to enable validation of the intermediate step, which is prompt chaining. So starting with meta prompting, getting a prompt, then using that and adding more example. You just say add more examples in this prompt. you get few short prompts, or the prompt which is having the example of the few short prompt. You use that prompt, or you use the prompt chaining to even refine that prompt further, or refine the outcome further. So not only to get the prompt, but also the outcome. With the meta prompt, you got a test plan. Now in the test plan, you want something else. You use few short prompting. Then you use prompt chaining to get more granular detail in particular section of the test plan. So combining these prompting techniques to reach a full-fledged test plan or test strategy, that is what you will be doing in your project, not sticking to a single prompting technique. So that's all about this tutorial. In the next one, I'll cover another topic of ISTQB Gen AI certification. Thank you. See you in the next tutorial.